Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Bill. How are you, sir?
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. How about yourself?
Keeping it real. This
Mm-hmm.
week is rough.
Is
This
it?
week is rough. Yeah, last week was a little bit rough, and I'm in the middle of another rough week right now. Just like many small things at the same time is kind of what it does, and then it adds up, and I get stressed out. So I'm currently a little bit task mode, John, like a little bit because I'm a little bit stressed out, a little bit just trying to make it through, kind of thing. But
Yeah.
the important thing to know is that like this happens to everybody. Like just because you're running your own thing doesn't mean everything's going to be rainbows and glory, things like that. Sometimes people have issues and have misunderstandings and things like that. So it's
Yeah.
part of the process, even though it sucks.
Yet the million small cuts are just as bad as one big one,
Yep,
if not
absolutely.
worse, because you can't just knock it out quickly.
Yes, exactly right. So I did have good stuff go on yesterday, but I'm in the middle of some stuff, and so it's also important to look at the entire day and not just focus on the parts you would rather not have had to go through. So
Yep,
good
that's
with the
true.
bad.
That's true. Well, are you headed towards some conclusions to help get that in a better place?
I don't know. We'll see. We shall see. It's
Okay.
largely like the one main thing is not really in my hands. Clients a little bit frustrated. We're moving slower than they would like.
Mm-hmm.
They're off being super busy, so goal was to bring them some people. I did. No one got interviewed, so we're kind of stuck. And yeah, it's a nightmare from there. I'm not going to talk too much more about it here because it's in
Sure.
the middle of the process. But yeah, we'll talk more about it in the future once it all wraps up and everything potentially.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's some days it's like that, and some days it's not. But
Yes,
you can't avoid them. Not
you
forever.
can't avoid them. No, doesn't do you any good to avoid it.
True. True. Um, yeah, we can definitely talk some more too in the future because I know for me I'm getting ready to jump into some stuff that I haven't done yet, just in this role,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm sure I'm going to hit some bumps because it's just bound to happen because I've
Yeah.
never been there before and I don't know exactly what to expect. So yeah,
Yep.
cool. Well, okay, so how about yesterday in particular? You said there was some good stuff that went on as well. You said you had like 5 calls yesterday or something like that as well. So
Yeah. So I got to do a first session with a new person, and he's working for a guy. He's also working a side job, and he's also trying to build a side hustle. And so we were kind of talking through his situation. It was the very first session, and it was cool because he had come to Sales Lab. So we were talking about something, and he was like, "Dude, I tried that thing you said yesterday," and I was like, "Oh, how'd it go?" And he was like, "So easy." I was like, "That's very cool. Like, how do you
mhm.
feel?" Good. It's like, okay. So that stuff gets me excited. Arguing with clients does not. So
Right.
good morning,
Yeah.
Michelle.
Oh yeah.
The Stiflers are in Texas, everybody.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
No.
Glad to have you. Welcome.
Yes, wedding this weekend. It's gonna be rad.
That's right. Is this weekend?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Love it. Oh, hi,
Yeah.
Michelle. Okay.
Um. So yeah. So one of my calls canceled, which is okay. So one, two. I had a really good call actually with a guy working on like a project for Sean Overton, who you know.
Mhm.
And so he introduced me to one of his referral partners, so that way I could have a conversation of like, okay, how do you, market research kind of stuff. How do you view Sean? What's a good referral for him? Everything else like that. And this guy was awesome. Like he was a salesperson, right? And so he was moving pretty quickly, and I guess he'd forgotten why we were meeting, and so he sends me this email. Hey, are you, or are we meeting so you can sell me sales training? I was like, no, sir, no, just a little bit of research, trying to help a buddy out. And he's like, oh, okay, so hopped on the call, had a really good call. It was only supposed to be 30 minutes, and I think we went about an hour and 15. He's like a science fiction nerd, and yeah, like right in my lane. So very, very cool conversation. So that was cool. And then my lunch club call was very cool. This woman is down in Houston, loves German, and used to be an editor for the New York Times. Such a cool conversation. And like she moved from being an editor to selling life insurance. I was like, that's a move that most people don't make. So very cool conversation. Yeah. Yeah. So
Wow.
those were great conversations yesterday. Yeah.
Awesome, man. That's excellent. I had a pretty standard day yesterday. So no big stickouts for me, but yeah, I'm still in that stage of lots and lots of reps till I get my own clients, and
yes,
I'm about a week away. So I'm getting excited now, but I actually have a kickoff call today with the sales manager for the client I'm going to be starting in on next week.
Okay.
And they're in the UK. And so we're going to do a end of day for me, beginning of day for him call this afternoon. Nice. So I'll get to kind of set expectations for our time together and make sure that he's getting everything he needs.
Yeah, nice. So. The new team that I'm working with, we got their kind of one-to-one time set up, and so we've done their assessments. Two of them, the leader and one of the salespeople are C types first, and the other one is the mix of ID. Mm-hmm. So we now kind of know a path and a plan that we're going to be working on in the reps and the practice, and so that's going good. Next week for them, I'm going to be starting diving into the CRM and looking at their process steps and documentation and all that stuff. And I have a cool conversation today, another one of these kind of market research calls that I can hear about it, from someone who's not involved with the company directly. Mm-hmm. I had lunch with a local friend, and he introduced me to their treasury management officer. So I'm going to have a Zoom call with her today, ask her all the questions. And so I have that. Then I have sales practice lab immediately after that. Let's see. After that, I have a call. I have a networking call that my friend Whitlock got me connected with. And then I'm going to be doing some ClickUp work from 2 to 3 because I document my day as I go through my day. And I do this inside of Notion, right? I used to use Workflowy as a tool for this. And Workflowy still works and Notion still works. But everything else inside of our company is in ClickUp, right? Not the right way. It's not all process driven where you can just hit the button and it does what it needs to do. But at least we have a bunch of documentation. The schematic lives in there. And so I am trying to be better about doing that daily documentation that I do inside of that system, because having it outside of that system means someone has to put it into that system. So I can remove that step by just making myself operate in that system. I have a bit of a block as far as using ClickUp for this one specific thing, and I'm not exactly sure why.
Yeah.
So today, me and my ClickUp friend Christina are going to be she's just going to be hammering me and making me do it the right way, and hopefully I get unblocked about it. So that's that, and then I have a lunch club call.
It's interesting because we have people that use Notion and ClickUp as well.
Mm-hmm.
Together combined. So I just haven't been in both of them long enough to know why that's possible. Because I would assume it's the same for you, but for me, that drives me crazy to think there's two similar tools that can't do everything I need to do. One of them can't just do all of it somehow. So that would drive me batty. Because right now I'm just using ClickUp. I'm not using Notion yet. I'm going to try not to because I don't want another tool.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's important to know is they're different tools. I think, right? I think in the on-shelf white label application of them, ClickUp is not for documenting your days. It's not for keeping notes. It's meant as a project management system. So I'm trying to force it a little bit to do what I want it to do, so that way I don't have to do a system hop.
Yeah. What do you mean by document your day then? Because maybe that's where I'm.
So great question. So each morning I have a template that I have inside of Notion, and I can go into my Notion. I've got a little space that's 2022 daily log, right? And so when I click that thing, it pre-populates. It says my morning time, which is usually before anything happens. If I do any walking or meditating or anything, there's a spot in there for morning build to kind of put some notes about what we talked about. And then there's just little bullet points, and I go in and I put my appointments for that day on there, right? So then, okay, great. I have got this conversation with the treasury management officer. I would take all the notes that I had from that call, and I put it under that bullet point, right? And then sales practice lab, who attended, what did we cover, what did we talk about, what kind of nuggets did anybody get? Great. I do this in pretty much every call. Like I'm a little bit behind right now because I'm trying to like force a bit of a gap between doing this inside of Notion and like getting comfortable doing it, because if I try to do it like right on top of each other, I'm just going to be like, man, I miss Notion, and then I won't do it. So I'm about a week behind in doing this. And so like I'm feeling this kind of like chafing, which is going to make me very excited to like dump into a new system if we can make it work the way that I want it to. So pretty much I used to do this written by hand. Like the last time we were doing Morning Bill, I would have my journal just right here on my desktop right here like this, and I would just be taking these handwritten notes. Yeah, exactly. I stopped doing that because it kind of seemed like that was two system jumps, right? I am handwriting, and then it has to go into a system, and that's like a lot more effort to do. The recall improves because it's one more rep of doing it, but okay, let's just type it, right? And that's when I moved to Workflowy, and then Workflowy got a little limiting, and so then it's like, let's move to Notion. So now I'm over in Notion, but really I need to be in the system that everything else is happening with. So like I wouldn't let anybody else do this inside of my company. Like, well, okay, so where's all your notes and documentation? They're in a system that only I have access to. We need to fix that, kind of thing. So, if I would expect it of others, I'm going to try to toe that same line. So
yeah, that's a good point. What does that documentation do for you? Like, why is that important that you're documenting your day?
A lot of my conversations have a lot of overlap, right? As a coach, there's so much I don't try to coach on because they're not my area. In one of my cold emails yesterday, the guy responded and he was like, "You look like a general business coach," and I'm like, "You looked at my website and you think I'm a general business coach? Interesting," right? Because that's not what normally happens when people look at the site. So okay, cool. So I'm a sales coach, right? I'm a sales mindset coach. I'm a sales process coach, right? I help with these things. So a lot of my conversations are very similar, and so I want to make sure that I'm familiar with like what we've talked about, so that way if I'm working one-to-one with a client, I can know, okay, yeah, we talked about this thing before, right? So let's reinforce it and don't overcoach it versus, hey, this is brand new territory. You need to slow down a little bit, check for understanding, make sure they got it, all that other stuff. So it's that. It's also tracking their pipelines and goals and stuff like that, because as the coach, if they're not performing more and higher than they were before, I'm not really doing my job very well, right? And so I track the numbers that I can get from people, right? So I'm always like, how's your pipeline? How many deals you doing? Stuff like that. So I document all that down. The bad thing is that it doesn't go into like a central repository, right? It just all lives in Notion I've exported from Workflowy at this point. So it's all just in Notion, which isn't a bad thing, but ideally what would happen is I would go through these days, I would do this documentation, I would have someone on my team who could then go through and like process those things into like long-term holding. So as opposed to it being like daily organized now, it would then go through a process of being like attached to the client. So that way I can go in, I can just go look at like a client file and have a consolidated view, as opposed to having to go back and look at, this day, this day kind of thing. I just haven't hired that person yet because it kind of feels, how do I say this? Superfluous? Does that make sense? Right? It seems like it seems like a nice to have.
Yeah, it would be hard to put ROI to that from like a business owner mentality to go.
Yes,
this is absolutely all you do. Okay, and is that all client stuff, or is that like literally everything that you do during the day, or is it just client calls you're talking about?
So I try to do everything, right? Because one of the things that's like important to me, right, is not focusing on the things that I don't need to focus on, right? So just like I was saying yesterday, a little bit frustrated with some of my client work. That's okay, because there was also good stuff that happened yesterday. You gotta look for both. So some weeks I've got all the tasks in my head of things to do, and then at the end of the week I've not gotten all those tasks done, but it was because other things happened, right? So documenting my day is one of those ways of being like, okay, cool. I didn't just blow this time or waste it or spend it like scrolling through my phone or something like this. Like I was actively engaged. I didn't get this stuff done. I got this stuff done. Okay, kind of deal. So when I'm really on my game, I'm documenting. I made this introduction. I did this little thing here. I, worked on this piece of data. I built this thing, kind of thing. But not always. Just depends.
Gotcha. So you're like Da Vinci. You're recording all the different things for reprocessing later, for cross use, for opportunities to learn. Because from my understanding, Da Vinci liked to document most everything he was working on for that reason, which is why we have records of his still laying around.
Yes, I didn't. I mean, I think that's a pretty big step up. Like I don't I'm not over here like, here's what a helicopter should look like. I'm not doing anything like that. Like this
just things that are going to happen 100 years after I die.
This is just sales nerdom, honestly. The people who it's important to know, like, how many more people an entrepreneur, a biz dev person, a salesperson is going to meet than the average person. Like, you can't hold that many people in your head. So if you're not doing a good job of taking notes, guess what? You're going to forget about people, right? He also put in a secret code.
Yeah, you're right, Michael. He did on some of it, I think.
Yes, it's all written in a code that only I can read because you must know the cipher. It's the Da Vinci Code. No, I'm just kidding. That's way too much effort, and no one cares. So yeah,
until you're dead, and then they're like, "What is this stuff? He put a code on it. It must be amazing."
Exactly. Yeah. I wonder if I could build that as an automation, right? If I don't open Notion for like 72 weeks in a row or something like this, please encrypt all my data. Passcode is Bosco, from Seinfeld. Yeah, I don't know.
Yep, that's good. That's good. Well, that's super interesting. I didn't know you did that because a while back, and gosh, I'm gonna forget who this was, but you and I both know this person, and they are. I'm in the blank. But anyway, he would have a Google Drive document brought up before the call presentation.
Yes,
share it with you, and we would take notes together. And at the end of the call, you would already have access to our notes, and he would already have it filed. And I thought that was genius, so I stole that. So when I have client calls, I always have a doc pulled up with the notes I'm taking, and they have access. So no, obviously that doesn't work all the time because you do have client work and you have different things like that.
Yeah,
just like gives them right now, and deliverables particularly.
Yes,
but I like that idea so that everyone kind of knows what happened and everyone has access to recaps, and then you can share the knowledge very quickly. Which is why I like things like ClickUp and Notion, is it gives everyone an opportunity to have access immediately. And then, Mike's gonna make passwords go away too. So that's a good thing. I mean, or not.
My unique frustration about like this whole security thing with like 2FA is your phone is, as much as it's a secure device and on your person, is not the thing I want like OTP texts to, right? And so it drives me crazy whenever someone is like, you must use 2FA, but we're only going to send it to your phone. Like, I use Google Authenticator, which is a free app, and let's go, kind of thing. So it's frustrating to me whenever like, enter your cell phone and I don't want you to text me. I should be able to do this a different way.
It's one more step into your wallet, essentially. That's the close.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have Google Authenticator too, and I don't use it that often because most people still don't even offer that.
Oh man, I use it. I like, if I can turn it on, I do turn it on, and I have it tied straight in there. So I probably have 8 or 10 systems that I use inside of my like authenticator. So
yeah, Mike, I used Evernote for a long time for the same idea.
Evernote always confused me for some reason. I was like, and this is before really understanding, like, I guess, like how cloud works and being able to like access one thing in many different places. Right. And that was like the big draw at the time. And I was just like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And now I use like Notion, which is, and I've used Workflowy, and I've used some of these other
everything tools. You use is cloud-based now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They were just the first one, and it was confusing to me, so I didn't like it.
Yeah, and I got forced into it, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can go home and pick this up too. Oh my gosh. But what happens to the old stuff? Like, it's still there. It's okay. Like an old man, like a 79-year-old with an iPhone watch. What?
Yeah. One of my clients has got one of these small business packages, right? And if you don't know, these big companies will show up and they're like, hey, you want to be all in one, and they'll offer you the whole moon, but it's only for like a year, and then they decide, we're not going to do this anymore, right? And so this one client has got like Yahoo small business kind of thing, right? And it was through Verizon, and then it was through someone else, and so now they've got this kind of mess of like DNS, right? Because it's like the site is pointing over here, the email, it's so I was like, guys, we need to contact a friend of mine because this is more than I feel comfortable making changes on. So let's get them in there. So yeah, it's weird because these people make these changes to different service providers, and then the service provider decides, what, we're not going to do this anymore, and yeah, then the business owner has to like figure it out. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's a nice bag to hold.
It's a whole lot of irons.
Even when you know what you're doing, you can be like, I've never heard of this one. Let's just keep going. Try something else.
Yeah, like I got access to one of the accounts and was just surveying the lay of the land, right? Because when you start making like DNS changes and stuff, if you don't really know what you're doing, it's going to be potentially you're going to bring down someone's email, someone's site. And a couple of months ago, we had a client who was like, "Oh yeah, we're going to change our like email ourselves." I was like, "You sure?" And they're like, "Yeah." Made a change, brought down the email, and then I'm getting an email. Hey, you were right. We did bring it down. Okay, let's fix it.
Yep, the life of, I don't know what you call it, web people.
Yeah,
don't do that. That'll happen. We'll just
really glad that web is not the focus anymore.
Yes, I'm glad that's not my profession.
It's a lot of moving parts, and it's hard to do well because managing a like it doesn't matter if you have someone's website up and active for like 5 years, right? The one day it goes down is the day they're going to check it themselves or hear about it and then be, incensed. How could you? Hey, these things happen,
Okay.
So, yeah. How dare you?
How dare you?
Yes.
I have one question. How dare you?
Yeah. How dare you?
Yes. Okay. Well, I will tell everyone that I completely dropped the ball and completely forgot to put our event up for this week. So I will be doing that today as soon as we get off the call.
Okay.
So we'll have a good 24 hours to marinate on that.
Yes.
But we do have a guest tomorrow. Should we talk
Mike
about
Simmons? Mike Simmons is coming on tomorrow, everybody. Mike is another sales nerd, sales coach, sales consultant. He does a lot of different things. And tomorrow we're going to be talking specifically about story because in the Slack community, we were kind of talking a lot about story and frameworks for story building and how to use it. And he has done a lot of deep diving into like these big story people who talk about it a lot, have written books about it and everything. So we're going to be talking about that, and also kind of what he does as a sales consultant, how he gets it done, who he works with, and that whole thing. It's going to be cool.
I'm looking forward to it. Anytime we can get another take on story in general, I think it ends up being cool because everyone kind of understands the concept, but everyone applies it like a little differently. I mean, just looking at some of our past guests already, with Obed and Will and anybody else has talked about something story related, but they all do it like just a little different, and it's all cool.
Yes, so absolutely.
New take,
Yeah, you can make a framework for anything. Mm-hmm. You can use any framework that is applicable to you and approachable, right? So, Sherpa is a mindset framework on top of the Big Seven, which is like a very proactive sales qualification process that we have built. There's 1,000 other ways to get it done. Like so many other ways, right? And in some situations, you need to do it a different way. You don't need to worry about being a Sherpa in the Big Seven. You're just trying to put the product in the person's hands because that's what it takes. So, yeah, sales is different, right? So if you can build a framework, that's great. You have to understand that you built that framework for yourself, and it might not be something your clients can use.
I've got a esoteric question here.
Yeah.
Is sales the most complicated vocation there is?
Is sales the most complicated vocation there is?
Figure out to frame, to get good at, to it's so meta in so many ways.
I don't, you know, it's weird. Now that there's, you know, now that there are some colleges and stuff like this who offer a sales track, I think it's getting better. But, you know, when you're new, you don't know if you're working for someone who actually gets it or is just forced it, you know. And a lot of people who I coach are like, well, we do this, we do this, we do this, and it's like, okay, it's just so broad, right? It's like
Yes.
it's you know
Down.
it is, right? And because it's not taught like neurosurgeon, right, is
Sure.
taught as a track, right? And so, you know, John Hopkins is going to be a little bit different than some of the other medical schools. At the end of the day, there's one certifying body you have to pass to get your credentials to be a doctor, right? And so that standardization creates some ease, right? Because once you know that there's a test on it, right? Okay, well, let's figure out what the test is. Okay, great. Then let's build the prep for
Yeah.
that test.
That's kind of
Well,
my point. Yeah.
yeah,
There's a
sales.
track to do all the things neurosurgeon.
Yes, absolutely. Sales, you don't know if your track is even going to like lead to success or not, because you might be working for a leader who says this thing sells itself. You just have to be there to catch people, and you know they've got the wrong view.
Really, the big thought for me was that because literally the whole job is to talk to people about stuff they're going through.
Yes,
I can't imagine a more complex problem to solve, because every single person that you pick up the phone and talk to is a little different than the last. Now, obviously, there's patterns, there's
yes,
frameworks, there's things you do to corral
hmm
and keep people going, but like literally every call's different.
yes. Which is why I'm not a big believer in scripts,
Right.
right? And so these people are like, John, can you give me a script? Yeah, okay, great. You know, just start talking to me about something you know very well, and I'm just going to keep interrupting you, and let's see if you can stay on that thing. Like it's like there's no room to actually appreciate the other human in a script, right? Hello, I am calling you today because I have a fantastic offer for you. Pause.
Who is this?
You know, like, well, I'm just saying.
No, I'm
like,
kidding. I was being the
oh.
Sorry, who is this?
You know, and like it doesn't do well for actual human to human interaction, right? And so then, unfortunately, there are so many people who write these scripts who were not actually talking to these clients, or they're like a CEO, and so they got the CEO label. And it's different when you're a CEO versus a salesperson in an organization. Like you sell very differently, and the things you can expect when you're a CEO and have status change, right? So, you know, if you move a meeting as a salesperson, you might not get that meeting again. Got to be aware of that. You know, and the CEO is like, we're having an all hands meeting. Let's just move these other meetings. And, you know, it's like, these are tied to revenue potentially, right? So we might not be able to get them back. So it is such like the lane is hard, the knowledge is hard. And then also doing it in a way so that you can show the work and keep everyone on the same page is uniquely difficult, because we don't love to share failure. Like
right.
I almost didn't want to say anything about struggling this week on this show, which is a little bit absurd. But yeah, like, so then the sales manager is like, hey, is that deal going to close? And, you know, the blindsided salesperson who's still bleary eyed and, you know, maybe hungover is like, oh, yeah. Come in any day, boss. And now there's pressure there.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a hard role. And then you add the people dynamic on top of it, internal and external. It becomes hard, right? Humans are chaos machines, and we deal with lots of them as salespeople.
That's exactly it. It's a job with chaos machines all day long. So
exactly.
And you know, Michael, neurosurgeon, of course, because the thing about that one is we don't know near as much about the brain as every other thing that we work on. The brain's such an intricate machine that we just don't know much about. So I think that's also a fair shake.
Yeah,
sure. There's
I'm not saying
lines to do things, but we don't know everything, so that makes it really complicated.
Yeah, like I've met some neurosurgeons. I used to try to sell to them. So yeah, they're very smart people, very smart, but like not superhuman smart. So while it's a hard role to be in, part of it is just jumping through all the hoops that make you to get to there, right? Yeah. Like I think that's the hard part, honestly, is the 12-hour shifts and the
work to get there.
Yeah, it's like a 10-year trek to get to that level. So it's meant to burn people out, I think.
Yep. Well, speaking of burning out.
Yeah, you got to go.
I'm gonna hop off of here. I got an 8 a.m. right now, so we are gonna see everyone tomorrow with our guest.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Mike Simmons, everybody.
7:30. So thanks everybody, Michelle, Mike, Michael. Thanks for coming, and thanks to you, Bill. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate it, man. It's not comfortable, but this is what it's really like. Not every week's going to be awesome.
All right. Well, hit me if you need something today. All right.
Absolutely.
All right. Cool. All right. See you guys tomorrow.